Hey everyone, this is Brett Favre, Green Bay Packers Super Bowl champion, and you're watching Packers Total Access Live, your daily source for Packers content. Go Packers.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Good Morning Lambeau. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on Packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. Joined alongside Tim in a balmy Green Bay, Wisconsin. What are you guys sitting at about? I don't know, 2 degrees, Tim, something like that, man?
Let's see, 6 degrees.
Hey, warm front rolling through. Love
yes,
it.
sir.
Yeah, I like Prince here in the chat already. Go, Brett, go. Get that deer. I said, it's only fitting. He messaged me back, is that okay? Right? I said, that's perfect for this crappy show. Are you kidding me?
And then Brett was like, good, because I'm not leaving the deer blind for another week.
Exactly. Gotta get that buck this morning for sure, man. Chet in the house says -10 in Montana this morning. Boy, y'all stay safe out there, man. Stay warm. That's dangerous type
Montana,
weather.
-10 in February? Meh. Heat wave.
Exactly. All right, man. Let's jump into it, guys. We're going to have to keep it to 40 minutes today. I got 2 or 3 appointments I got to hit. Got to go see a guy about a horse. That means see a guy about a work truck. And then and then a couple of horses, I guess you could say. And then got a business meeting I got to attend. So it's going to be a busy morning. So we're going to just keep it to 40 minutes. We got a couple of things I wanted to hit on. Really excited about what we're going to dive into. If you guys haven't caught on, like we try to take multiple angles at dissecting what the Packers may be thinking, what would be the best route to fill out this roster. You know, we've identified a bunch of needs. We talk about center. We talked about wide receiver now that Christian Watson is going to be out until week 12. Obviously, we've talked about solidifying the defensive line. I personally think it should go through the interior defensive line as opposed to edge, although if you can land one of these top-tier guys at edge, great, more power to you, right? That doesn't hurt things. And then, of course, you got to talk about cornerback with Jair, with his future up in the air a little bit there, wondering if he's going to return as a Packer or not. So you got all these different angles you're trying to attack everything from. And Tim, we cannot overlook Brandon McManus. Got to get that dude back in-house as quick as possible, right? So,
yes.
But when we talk about this, it's easy to go, well, this guy has a better PFF grade, let's go with him. Or this guy had the most touchdowns, let's go with him. And we want to peel another layer back and understand, especially at the wide receiver position, okay, how good is this player? And Tim and I, we spent some time last night watching some tape after the show. And we keyed in on T. Higgins a little bit, right? And looking at T. Higgins. And listen, he showed some good stuff on tape. Contested catches. The yak kind of surprised me, Tim. Him running through arm tackles, right? So he looked pretty good when you look at, again, we're looking at highlights, though. We're looking at the explosive plays. We're not looking at every snap. PFF has him graded out the wazoo, right? So I wanted to do a little experiment this morning. And let's just dive into it first. I do want to mention this real quick. I think this is awesome that Edgerrin Cooper is embracing, the Wisconsin life here as he was at a Bucks game courtside with his lady friend. Pretty darn cool. I didn't realize this. I immediately Googled, like, is that his fiance? Is that his wife? Is that his girlfriend? You know, I went that route. And an article popped up, Tim. He was dating a young lady in 2023 that passed away. I didn't know that. Did you know that?
Wow. I had no idea.
Me either. So when I seen this image here, I thought, okay, well, they've probably been dating for a while, but he suffered that little bit of tragedy there, you know, obviously in college and all that. But I don't know anything about her. I don't think we should go creeping. I was just wondering, is he married? Is he engaged? You know, but
right.
Pretty cool. Him and his lady friend taking it all in courtside in Milwaukee. That's how you win over the Wisconsin fans, as if he didn't already do it on the field, right?
Oh yeah, you gotta make the Bucks game appearances for sure. We saw Jordan doing that a couple years back. I'm sure he still goes to games now and then. And that's the beautiful thing about the Packers, right? We're the only 2-market team in the National Football League. So big shout out to all the Milwaukee fans. I'm a Milwaukee guy. Been in Green Bay a couple of years. It's a beautiful thing. So sometimes you gotta jump off 43, man, and go south and go down to Milwaukee, man. Enjoy a Bucks game, shake hands, kiss babies, get your picture taken. Love it. You couple though, right? Look at them. That's doing Green Bay proud right there for sure, man. Shout out to Cowboy Coop and his lady.
Absolutely. You notice Tim said, shake hands, kiss babies, don't sniff babies. All right. You go in there sniffing, man. That's
Yeah.
Look creepy, right? Look creepy. We'll leave that one alone. Drew D says T. Higgins is legit in my opinion, but always have to consider the cost. So let's kind of dive into the wide receiver talk. And this is what I had queued up for us here. And then we'll see where the conversation takes us. I'll try to keep an eye on the chat as I'm rolling through this info, guys. I put this tweet out earlier, okay? And wanted to get everybody's take on it.
Oh, yeah. I just saw this one right before we went live. I didn't get a chance to comment.
So you guys know we did the whole defensive tackle and edge defender kind of exercise yesterday to remove the names so nobody's got any biases, right? And also include the cap hit, that type of thing, right? So I said, Packer fans, you can only select two of the following. Which combination of two wide receivers would you rather have? Player 1, 1,244 receiving yards, 11.4 yards per target, cap hit of only $2 million. Player 2, 908 yards, 8.3 yards per target, cap hit $3.3 million. Or player 3, 911 yards, 8.3 yards per target, cap hit $25 million. Now, I think everyone would probably agree you would go combination player 1 and 2, right? Now, Tim, I don't want to make you choose that direction. I don't know why anybody will go with player 3, but the question's on the table for you, sir. How would you approach that?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and be boring. I'm going with 1 and 2.
Yeah, that's me. That's me, man. So if you're wondering who these players are, okay, player 1 is Jaden Reed. Player 2 is Romeo Dobbs. And player 3 is obviously T. Higgins. And you're going, whoa, Clayton. Jaden Reed didn't have 1,244 yards. The difference is the targets. So we look at T. Higgins and we see the highlights. All right, like me and Tim did it last night. Tim, when we ended our conversation, we were going, damn, T looks pretty good. And we're looking at all the positive plays, but man, a couple contested catches in there, some good yak, right? The reality, guys, is T. Higgins had 109 targets for 911 yards. It's only 8.3 yards per target. Now, whether that's good or bad, you be the judge of that. Jaden Reed had 34 less targets, 34 less targets than Higgins, and he finished with more yards, or a little bit less yards, but he had 11.4 yards per target. So if you take Jaden Reed and you give him the same exact amount of targets that T. Higgins had, the same opportunities, right? And keep people go, well, he'll drop the ball. This includes the drops. The drop rate's still in there, right? This is his rate at which he would, how many yards he would have if he had the same amount of targets as T. Higgins. He 11.4 yards per target. 34 more targets equals 387 more yards, would put him at 1,244 yards. And people were going, well, what about the touchdowns? I didn't factor in the touchdowns because it's kind of hard. You got to get the exact percentage and then figure out. Honestly, T. Higgins finished with 10 touchdowns. I think Jaden Reed finished with 6 if you don't include his rushing touchdowns as well. So it would be pretty close to the same, to be honest with you. It would probably – he might have actually exceeded him. I just ran out of time. And I try to keep the characters limited on these tweets as well as much as possible. So, again, Jaden Reed, if he had got the same amount of targets that T. Higgins got, he would have 1,244 yards. So when you look at Jaden Reed, you go, man, he really fell off. Guys, you can see it down the stretch. We weren't targeting him as much.
Yep.
But again, because we were pressing into the run quite a bit, and teams were looking to stop Jaden Reed. Why were they looking to stop Jaden Reed? Guys, he outplayed T. Higgins. Jaden Reed outplayed T. Higgins. That's the situation. And T. Higgins doesn't give you that gadget aspect with the jet sweeps and things like that as well, to be honest with you. So was Jaden Reed perfect? No. But the fact that most people in the chat, in our chat, do not agree with going after T. Higgins. I want to say that. I'm just saying, if you go through Packers Twitter and just poll question fans in general, they would approach that and go, yeah, give me T. Higgins. He's a dog. And in the same breath, be like, man, Jaden Reed really fell off this year. It's like, are we watching the same game here? So thoughts on that? Let's keep it on Reed versus Higgins here, Tim. And again, if you go get T. Higgins and add him to this receiver group, this whole exercise really doesn't apply. The point was, why are we putting so much value on T. Higgins to the tune of $25 million per year when Jaden Reed has outperformed him this year? So what's your take on that with Jaden Reed versus T. Higgins? Then we'll move on to the Dobb question.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder what kind of impact that would be. I think when we watched the film on Higgins last night, you and I kind of came away with that conversation. Like, what would he look like in this Packers offense? And what would that mean for guys like Jaden Reed and Tay Wicks, what Romeo Dobbs, what would that look like as far as spreading the targets around? One of the things we noticed about Higgins is he played, for a bigger body guy, field stretcher type of guy, they lined him up in the slot on more than 1 or 2 or 10 occasions in that Cincinnati offense. So bumping him into the slot out wide, how does that affect the targets and the rest of this offense is how I kind of look at it. Cause it's not an either or scenario. If you brought Higgins in, you're going to have Higgins and Reed out there at the same time. So, which obviously, on the surface, you think, wow, that makes your offense better. It probably does, but I think there's a bit of a learning curve with, spreading the ball around and figuring out exactly what his role is going to be. I do feel like Higgins is a legitimate, if you're talking about replacing, the void that Scoot being out is going to leave. We saw that on tape. Higgins stretch in the field, great stride length, might have slightly better hands than Scoot with the contested catches.
I agree with that.
Down the field. So, I think it's legitimate to consider that when you're looking to replace that void. However, I will say this, I'm still a little bit higher on a couple other guys in free agency. And then, of course, there's another Higgins in the draft that I really like that's available. That's no secret. But I will tell you this, I've come around. I think the film study kind of helped us a little bit, and at least helped me to realize that, I don't think, T Higgins would be my first choice, but if he ends up being a Packer, it's nothing to be upset about. The guy's talented, and, doing a little research into his personality, I don't think he's going to be a toxic person in the locker room, like a lot of fans seem to think out there. There's kind of this narrative that he's a head case and not a team guy. And, looking at some of the guys in Cincinnati that have played with him, coaches and players that have talked about him, I don't think he's one of those, diva type dudes, and would probably be a net positive in our offense and in that wide receiver room. Again, it's about dollars and cents, and, looking at how much do you want to commit to a guy like that. Certainly when you look at free agent wide receivers, he's the youngest, so he's got the most shelf life left out of the top tier guys when you compare him to even a Godwin or an Amari Cooper, some of these other guys that are late 20s going into their early to mid 30s level. Higgins, I believe, is 26 or something like that. So right. Yeah, man, I think when you look at this, I had a feeling one of these guys was Romeo Dobbs on this right. on this list. Old Romy Rome.
I just caught the ball.
How does Higgins fit in with Reed and Dobbs in this offense, and how does that affect a guy like Tay Wicks who's looking to make up year 2 and year 3? So
right, I almost took it a layer deeper to Tay Wicks to go, okay, what was his? Because I feel like he would be less than T Higgins, but I don't think it would be like, holy cow, that's significantly less. He'd probably be right behind T Higgins' numbers here. The Caldwell Corner says, I love T and I think he's great, but I was watching some of the All-22 a couple weeks ago, and I'd personally prefer to go in another direction as far as wide receiver 1 goes for the Packers specifically. All right, appreciate that. And we'll talk about another free agent here in a second. You guys probably know who that is. He's my favorite wide receiver free agent as it sits right now. And I'm not even saying that he's even worth it, but we'll talk about it. Chris N says, don't overpay for good. Packers have made that mistake too many times already. Yeah, they overpaid for Kenny. That's overpaying for good, in my opinion. They overpaid for Savage with the 5th-year option. That's overpaying for not even good, to be honest with you. I'm not trying to be an ass, but it is what it is, right? So I think that's always what the filter you need to run it through for sure, Chris. Josh Martin said, I'd be so pissed if he pays T Higgins $30 million a year. I doubt it's going to happen, Josh. I really do. Yeah. It would have to be one of those things, kind of like how he got Xavier McKinney and he got Josh Jacobs. Day one, go in. Here's our best offer. If they don't take it, X them off your list and move on to the next guy. Who knows? They may take it because X. That's kind of how it happened with X. It was he looked up at the situation and said, okay, they're going to pull this offer quick. It's not just going to sit there and, hey, you go test the rest of the market. It's you put pressure. That's called leverage. You put pressure with a deadline. Deadline spur activity. You don't want to be hanging out for a week or two in free agency while this player gets entertained by all these other teams and drives the price up. Hey, here's the deadline. Here's our offer. Let us know by 3:00 today. And if the player goes, no, I want to see what my value is, and he's just not a fit, move on.
Then it's bye. See ya. That's why I think there's some logic to the fact that if you're talking T. Higgins, there's probably, we said at least 4 teams probably, right? Maybe even more. 4, 5, 6, 7 teams are going to be in a bidding war to try and get T. Higgins. If we're going to make a move, I would look for Goody to kind of wait for free agency to start, kind of see what the offers are, and then he's going to put that offer in. And, much like you said, it's going to be a cash over cap probably situation that he's going to try and get him if he's going to be a Packer. But I've definitely, I think I've softened my stance a little bit. I was steadfast in saying that, hey, T. Higgins is not the dude. Let's not do it. And really, it's just the financial side of it at this point. After doing a little bit more, I don't watch a ton of AFC football. So doing a little bit of, film study on him, I think he is a legitimate option when you're considering, we're not going to have Scoot for, 90% of the year next year. And we could be in a scenario if this did happen and Goody does this right, we could be looking at, our top 3 being a T. Higgins and Christian Watson and a Jaden Reed, guys in the fold going forward. So I think it would be a net positive if he was on the team. But again, it's got to make sense because there are other positional needs we have to address. And there's other guys on this team that need big time money, including Zach Tom being one of them. So it's a lot to think about.
Yeah, definitely. Caldwell Corner says, what I'm wondering is why we are putting Reed on the field only 55%-ish of the time. He needs to be a 70% plus guy. Completely agree, but you got to think about this too, Caldwell. Remember the ankle injury, right? And on the surface, it looks like it was not a big deal after that. But again, Jordan Love, there were some people that were saying, stop saying Jordan's hurt. He's not hurt anymore. You're just making excuses. Then you find out at the end of the year, it was pretty much bothering him the rest of the year, right? So that could have been the case with Jaden Reed as well, because his production, not even really his production, his targets tapered off after that. So maybe the coaches knew, hey, he's somewhat limited, but having him on the field is going to help draw some attention away. We don't know all the details there behind the scenes, and we never will, right? But I'm with you, man. I want him on the field the majority of the time. 70% of the snaps is ideal for me too. I'm assuming that 55% is correct. And if it is, I'm with you, man. We got to get that up, right? Josh Martin says people want the big names. That's a lot of what it is. And that's why I've been doing it this way. And we're going to hit on a Patreon question. If we don't get to it in the morning, we'll get to it tonight. But I've been doing these exercises, removing the names, because it makes people choose like, okay, wow. Or I didn't realize.
Put your GM hat on and look at the numbers. Yep.
Yeah, because I promise you, the GMs aren't looking up going, boy, yeah, it's T. Higgins. He's going, boy, give me the breakdown here. Let's do a cost benefit analysis here, right? Let's see what can he add to our team, and is it worth the differential in payment that you could add someone else at, right? That's what it really comes down to. Drew D says, well, you can't count guys on a rookie wage scale because they're undervalued. The whole purpose here, Drew, is you don't want to overpay for good, right? And here's the thing too. If you look at these numbers, right, then in a perfect world, Romeo Dobbs should be due $25 million this coming year. See what I'm saying?
I just caught the ball.
So now, if you're saying you got to go get a receiver right now, I understand that argument. I get that. But do you want to overpay for good just because you've got to have a wide receiver? I'm telling you, that's what the bad teams do. And we're talking about cash over cap. Cash over cap sounds great because it saves you cap space and you're giving more guaranteed money. But the problem is you better be damn sure they're not going to cause problems, because they're going to have you over a barrel if they've got that guaranteed money. Look at Deshaun Watson, fully guaranteed, right? If you get to a contract with a wide receiver like T. Higgins, like Randy Cleavers, and I don't have any reason to believe T would do this, but this seems to be the worry amongst all fans. I'm not going to lie to you. There's a little bit of worry in the back of my mind. I don't know where it's coming from. Maybe it's just the fact that he tried to hold out because of the franchise tag. Maybe that's it. But Randy Cleavers says, I think Higgins would destroy the locker room. He went on to say, if you bring him in for all that money, guys we have that are statistically equal will be getting attitudes, locker room problems, and rightfully so on their part. They look up and go, I've done just as much as him. I've actually done more for this organization than he has. Where's my money? Now you get a holdout or two there, right? That's how you end up with problems. One thing that Belichick did really well in New England for so long, and many people don't understand this, is he made sure that his key players were the ones who drove the cost in the locker room. That's why you would see him trade people like Vince Wilfork or whoever it may be. Not Vince Wilfork, Richard Seymour, Hall of Famer, traded him, right? Why'd you trade him? Because you had Vince Wilfork behind him that was going to be a younger player. If you're going to pay somebody that top money, then you want to pay it to a player that you're going to look up at 2 years and go, damn, that's a really good contract based off how he's playing. Like everything's got to be projected moving forward, right? Yep. It's important, man. Keeping that pay scale in order in your locker room. And you do that by sticking to the rule of thumb of overpay for great, never overpay for good. Holmes MD1 says no thanks to Higgins. So he said but he's done with it. You don't want T. Higgins. I love what Thomas says here. T. Higgins, the dollars make no sense with a C. I see what you did there, sir. I see what you did there. And Randy Cleaver says trenches instead of T. That's the other thing. Forget all this conversation that we just had. Why did you lose to the Eagles? Right? Why did the Chiefs lose to the Eagles? Right. It ain't because they didn't have this dominant number one receiver, right? It's because they got their asses kicked in the trenches. So if you're gonna beat the best, you've got to build your team to beat the best. Something that Al Davis always preached is just studying people that studied under him. People see Al Davis as the old Al Davis who was a kook with the Raiders. He went off his rocker a little bit there at the end of his career, pioneering the game of football, man. He's been a commissioner of a league with the startup AFL, and then he ended up obviously buying the Raiders. He was a coach back in the day for, I think it was the San Diego team way back in the day that became the Chargers, or maybe they were the Chargers right off the bat. Excellent football mind. That's his whole thing was how do you build a roster, right? It was always about how do you build the roster. Now he loved speed at the end of his tenure, but really what it came down to in the early stages of his career is are they gonna play like we want them to play? Are they gonna play like a Raider, right? Are they gonna put the team first? All those things. Like, I'm trying to think. The Raider way is what they say, right? Yep. Michael Lombardi was a part of the Raider way. He worked for Al Davis. He said they're talking about the Raider way out there with Antonio Pierce. He said this when Antonio Pierce got hired. He said Antonio Pierce doesn't have a damn clue what the Raider way actually is.
Yep. And we saw that, right? That's why he had
no
1 year, one and done, right?
But, like he said too, like Michael Lombardi said, he doesn't think that Al Davis's son understands the Raider way. He thinks that you need to get people back in there that worked with Al that understands the culture that Al created back in the 70s and the 80s when they were so good, right? So, but yeah, trenches, man, I'm with you there, Randy Cleavers, for sure. So, yeah, there's kind of the wide receiver breakdown. Let's move on to the other free agent real quick, Tim. Well, Dobbs. Let's talk about Dobbs. Dobbs, pretty much the same exact numbers if they had the same amount of targets, right, than T. Higgins. So now you got to look at bringing Dobbs or Christian back. Christian Watson's going to be a tough one. It breaks my heart for him because only playing 4 or 5 games next year at the max, that's really going to hurt his value. Now, maybe the Packers see that he's healthy and they place more value on him than anyone else does. That could be the case. He could come back in those last 5 games, Tim, and just absolutely light it up. That could happen too. So, but with Dobby here, do you think Dobbs is worth $25 million per average annual value? I personally don't. So, when I'm looking at these numbers, if you pay Dobbs that same amount of money, that's the projected market for T. Higgins, I think you'd be overpaying for good instead of overpaying for great and well there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would agree. And then you're basically committed and you're saying, hey, it's going to be, we're going with Rome and Scoot then at that point, right? We're probably going to maybe draft another guy behind them to develop. But I don't think we're going to take a big swing in free agency if you're going to pay, if that's the plan in the long term is to pay that guy, because Scoot will be the same thing. Like you said, let's say he comes back, we're in the mix. There's 4 or 5 games left. He gets his legs under him, has a great finish to the season, playoff push. It's going to be contract time, and I just don't, I don't know. I don't think, me, Rome's my guy. I love Romeo Dobbs, but I don't know if we're there yet with that kind of money for him. Plus there's the uncertainty too, like Randy's saying, that's kind of the vibe, right? He's another concussion away from retirement. You hate to say that, but, and you hate to see it, but I will say this. We talked about Tua, Tua's banged that head more than a few times. And after that last one he took, what was that, week 4 or 5 last season? I thought for sure he was heading to the retirement community for sure. And he was able to come back and continue to play. We'll see. But, you hope Rome is healthy going forward. But I'm with you, Clay. I don't know about that 25 plus milli.
All right. And Josh Martin says Dobbs and Watson have major injury concerns. I'm fine with moving on from them both. I get that stance too. I understand that if it's just, hey, we need to move on. If that's the case, then and we look at T. Higgins and go, man, you'd be really overpaying for that dude if you sign him. If that's the case, what does all signs point to? The draft, right? Yep. And trying to find one, maybe two receivers that are going to replace Dobbs and Christian after next year, right? And here's the thing. You're going to get the best version of Romeo Dobbs if he can stay healthy. You're going to get the best version of Christian Watson once he gets healthy. I'll tell you why. They're going to be playing for a new contract. I'm telling you, man, there's value in that. There is absolute value in that, no doubt. Drew D says Dobbs might be a guy that you can get on a deal.
Yep.
This was my whole stance. You guys remember last offseason, I said go to Christian Watson and Romeo Dobbs early so you can get a discount, right? If you can get both of them for $20 million average annual value, meaning $10 million each. If you go to them earlier rather than later, now Christian, it's tough because Christian that knee may do exactly what Bakhtiari's did, right? And he may never play another snap. I hate to say that, but there's always a possibility of that. That's why teams typically won't do that. Like Rashawn Gary was a freak. Rashawn Gary came back from his early. He didn't miss anything. It was, hey, look, I'm completely committed. And Goose said, that's our dude, let's sign him, right? And again, he's our best pass rusher. So from that standpoint, when it comes to Romeo Dobbs here, if you go to both of them and say, hey, man, what do you guys think about a 4-year deal? If you can prove to yourself Christian Watson's going to be healthy after the knee heals, which we know you can't guarantee that.
My knee.
If you go to Dobbs and say, hey, man, how about a 4-year, $40 million deal with $20 million fully guaranteed or $20 million guaranteed? Right? If you go with that deal, there's a good chance he says no, but also if you get him on that deal, you could structure it in a way where he's going to have less than a $10 million cap hit in the first year, which won't be next year, but the year after that, right, in 2026. And then 2027 will probably blimp to 12 or 13 million. And then 2028, you could potentially restructure, save money off the cap, guarantee a little bit if he's staying healthy, and reduce the cap number that way. That's a lot more palatable. Now you've got Jaden Reed, who's going to be coming up for a new contract. You definitely want to re-sign him, and it will be Romeo Dobbs and Jaden Reed. Potentially Christian Watson, if you can get him on a deal and he can prove he can stay healthy, or he can prove that knee is healthy, if that makes sense. So These are kind of the different branching scenarios you're going to be faced with in building this roster out as you move forward for the next 2, 3, 4 years, And the other thing too is like tight end. You may want to press into 12 a little bit more. If that's the case, then you don't want to have to pay 3 receivers top money. My blueprint, when I model a roster, Michael Lombardi said this: sit down with your favorite team and try to model the roster out. And here's how I see it. Pay 2 offensive linemen, no more than 2 offensive linemen, top offensive lineman money. You're willing to pay that. Doesn't mean you pay it if they're not worthy of it, if they're not great. Be willing to pay 2 offensive linemen. Damn sure be willing to pay a quarterback. If you've got the right quarterback, you got to pay him, right? If he's a legit top 10 quarterback, you got to pay him. Pay 1 running back. And then on defense, pay 1 defensive tackle, 1 edge, 1 linebacker, 1 safety. And I personally am not interested in paying top money for a corner. That's why when they re-signed Jair to that big deal, I'm pretty sure, I can't remember if we were doing the pod or not, but I was just like, I'm okay with paying good money for a great corner. I'm not okay with paying top cornerback money for a great corner, because I feel like that position isn't as important as post safety. I mean, how many years did we have Jai as the top paid corner, Tim? And we were still getting our ass kicked, right?
That's we had Darnell Savage playing safety.
Bingo. Jonathan Owens back there running around. So that's why it's like those are when I model my roster out, if you do that and you follow that, you're still going to have money to spend for some of the lesser important, positions. So that's kind of how I model the roster out. But yeah. And again, like Randy says here, you have Wicks in house also. Wicks has showed promise, but I don't think you can bank on him right now. You know what I mean? Maybe this year you can. Maybe he blows up this year, and that's great. You got him under contract for another year, and that's going to help you there as well. That might end up being the plan. The plan might end up being re-sign Jaden Reed, Dobby wants top money. Okay, you let him walk. And then Tay Wicks this year emerges as the number 2, and now you got the number 2 still on his rookie deal. You pay Reed, and then if Wicks is worthy of it, you pay him, a number 1 top receiver money as well. So
I could see that happening. And then some of those bottom tier guys on the depth chart maybe move up. Your Bo Meltons or your Malik Heaths. Your guys that don't have huge salaries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So the other free agent was Godwin. Let's compare Godwin. I didn't include him on here. I want you to focus on player 3, what's on the screen here. 911 yards, 8.3 yards per target, and a cap hit of $25 million. You guys know I said if I had to choose a free agent wide receiver, I would choose Godwin over T. Higgins. That's me personally. Godwin's numbers are 9.3 yards per target. Okay, so he's got one full yard more per target than T. Higgins does. All right. Now, obviously, he had a much smaller season, a much shorter season last year because of the ankle injury, which he's going to be fully healthy from. There's nobody who's worried about that injury whatsoever, from what I understand, everything I've read. So that would add another 437 yards onto his season. He would finish with 1,013 yards. So his numbers would be, look at player 3, T. Higgins, 911 yards with the same amount of targets. Our boy Godwin would have 1,013 yards. And then his yards per target would be 9.3 as opposed to 8.3. His projected cap number is $22 million. Still a little too rich for me. I still feel like you're overpaying for good, not overpaying for great, albeit Godwin, to me, fits that great mold better than T. Higgins does. Does that make sense, Dan?
Yep. So. Shout out to Soul Turtles. He was saying Godwin was on pace to have a pretty historic season if he could have avoided that ankle injury. It's very true.
Yeah, definitely.
And Godwin's not quite on the wrong side of 30 yet, right? 28, going to be 29, something like that.
Right. Yeah, I think he's going to be 28, or he's already 28. So what you would do is you target a 3-year deal that's actually a 2. Yep. And you can get out of it after 2 and save a little money as you move on. Now he may go in there and go, I want a 4-year deal. And the market, guys, the market is through the roof for wide receivers. Teams have overpaid for wide receivers just about every year. They really have. The other thing, the conversation that I know as a Packer fan I don't want to have, because me and Tim will probably disagree. I'm sure the chat will disagree, but I am firm in my stance that Joe Burrow is a better quarterback than Jordan Love. I believe that, me personally, and I could be wrong. But if you had a better quarterback with T. Higgins and he had those numbers, you kind of expect those numbers to go down a little bit unless Jordan takes that step to a top 3 quarterback. Because I feel like Joe Burrow is a top 3 quarterback. I mean, I was looking at his numbers, Tim, and I didn't realize just how good of a year he had. 4,918 yards, 43 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions.
Yep.
Like, if Jordan Love had those numbers, we would be talking like he's the greatest of all time, right? So if he's got a better quarterback in Cincinnati and he's not producing to the level that's worth $25 million, it kind of makes me think, okay, maybe he would not produce as much. And I know there's some people going, well, we overpaid for Jordan. I personally don't think we did. We've talked about the cap hit, right?
Yep.
He'll never be the top 5 cap hit. He's hovering right around between 16 to 10 as the cap hits roll in, and that's without the new quarterback contracts that are going to come down the pike. So we've got him locked up for a few years. So, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But in terms of Godwin, are you on board with that? You think Godwin over Higgins?
Oh, yeah, Godwin would be my first free agent target, personally, if I put my Goody hat on and I'm looking to sign someone, just because of the value you get, not just financially, but I feel like you get a slight bit more of veteran leadership. You talked about bringing Devontae back. We've kind of, I don't know about you, but I've kind of let that ship sail. I don't think it's going to happen at this point. But that's why, right? Not just what you do on the field, but how you can kind of help mold that wide receiver room a little bit with a veteran presence. I think Godwin brings a little more of that to the table than a T. Higgins, not just because he's been playing a little longer, but also what I've been able to find on T. Higgins is he's kind of a quiet, confident guy. He's kind of reserved. So I don't know if he's not going to be a guy that's going to come in and kind of put his arms around everybody in that wide receiver room and be that leader vocally, I don't think, or developmentally. I think T might be a guy that just comes in and does his job and that's it, and that's fine. You need guys like that. You can't have too many too many cooks in the kitchen, right? Not everyone can be a leader. You need people that need to play roles and, follow that example. So I like Godwin a little bit more for that reason.
Got it. And in the Patreon group here, I'm not going to put it on the screen because I want to flash this up on the screen here as I talk about this. But shout out to Chris in the Patreon group with a free agent that he listed here, Milton Williams, defensive tackle, Eagles, supreme pass rusher. So that's one of his favorite guys. Again, when we dissect these, the goal isn't to say, "Ha, you're wrong." Nope, I disagree with that. It's just let's walk through the process the same way we did, right? So Milton Williams, defensive tackle for the Eagles, we talked about it a little bit yesterday, Tim. And in case Chris didn't hear it, I said, Packer fans, which defensive tackle would you prefer to have and why? These are both 3 techs. Okay, Tim, these are 2 3 techs right here. And we talked about this yesterday. I got to go to my notes. So player 1 had a pressure rate of 12.5% and a run stop rate of only 9%. All right. His cap hit $12 million. And then player 2, the quarterback pressure is 9.7%, run stop rate of 19%, 10% higher than player 1 against the run. His cap hit only $4 million. So if you put a premium on the pass rush, and we know teams in the league do, you would say player 1 hands down. Player 1 is Milton Williams, the one that Chris N's talking about. Yep. But are you willing to take a hit in the run stop rate? And here's where the conversation steers to the tape, and you got to really focus, step back, look at the big picture and go, okay, how does Philly rush the quarterback? They pin their ears back and go. They're turning those guys loose. How did we rush the quarterback this year? We, many cases, we only brung 4, but we really just brought 3 because we had 1 occupying a double team and spying a little bit, right? So what I'm saying is if you put Wyatt in Philadelphia's defense the way they ran it, and we may run our defense different next year, and you put Milton Williams in Green Bay's defense the way it was called, the way it was run, I think the numbers will be very similar because Philly's style would cater to what Devontae Wyatt does well. But
is that player 2 then? Is that Devontae Wyatt player 2? Okay.
That's player 2. Yep. And that's surprising with that run stop rate. Why? Why is that surprising? Because PFF all year said he was cheeks at stopping the run, right? And that's why you got to be careful. We just broke down the T. Higgins thing. I don't think there's anybody in the chat that looks at those numbers and goes, "Yeah, I still want T. Higgins. He's worth it. He's worth $25 million," right? But if you go to PFF, he grades out in the 90s. So it's like, again,
if you go to the film, he's torching dudes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So it's one of those things that the other thing too, I'll point out with T. Higgins to give him the benefit of the doubt. We uncovered this last night too. Several of those big plays on third down, guys, that's huge. You want to understand the makeup of a player and whether they're a playmaker or not. What do they do on third down? That's what many scouts look at when they're scouting quarterbacks coming out of college. Is they'll go to the third down tape. I want to know what they do on third down. Show me how they respond on third down, especially third and longs. So I think that's a really, really interesting way of looking at it too. So now as far as Tay Adams, I see some people mentioning Tay in the chat. I didn't take time to do that. Trying to think, I probably could peek it real quick. I wanted to hit that. So we got that question from the Patreon group. Let me make sure. I think there was another one. There's a favorite draft prospect. I'm going to leave that one alone until tonight, so we can hit on it, guys. We'll hit on it on tonight's show. I'm trying to think here. Let me see if I can just quickly pull up our boy Tay Adams just to see how he fared in this because I didn't even look at that, Tim. I want to say Tay on the surface though, a lot of targets, whole lot of targets. So his yards per target would probably be cheeks. He was actually the second best receiver for the Jets. Of course, he got traded there, mid-season or whatever. So Devontae Adams had 114 targets for 854 yards. So he had more targets than T, right? So let's look at what that would be yards per target real quick. If we were to go, again, he had 854 yards. Give me just a second. I'm eager to see if he stacks up better than T. 7.4 yards, Tim. 7.4 yards per target. So Devontae's production in yards per target actually lower than T. Higgins's.
Yep.
So now, again, it comes down to the money. You can get any of these guys on a team-friendly deal, sign me up. We just know that's not the world we live in. The closest one to that's probably Tay, because he would, if he wants to come back to Green Bay, and
Right.
he'd have to restructure that. You could just about fully guarantee whatever deal you give him in Green Bay and make it a little bit more appealing. Because right now the guaranteed money's gone for him with the Jets, and it's all salary pretty much. So, thoughts on that, Tim? Tay?
Yeah, I don't think Tay's coming back.
Feels like West Coast, don't it?
Yeah, it does. Same thing for Aaron if he plays. And I think it's fair to say that those two are probably going to try and finish their careers together, wherever that is. So good luck to that prospective team trying to make that work.
Jason Y says the immediate need at wide receiver is speed. Tay is awesome, but not his strong suit. Yeah, and when he's saying speed, he's talking about, like we said, with Christian Watson being able to stretch the defense. And
that's why we like T. Higgins. We looked at T. Higgins tape, man. I mean, like we said, I wouldn't call T. Higgins quick, but he's fast. And he's got great stride length, and I think he's kind of underrated as a route runner too. He ran some pretty good routes, good release, and good hands. So you can't deny that for sure.
Yeah, the thing that stood out to me too, well, not stood out, but was just surprising, I should say, with T. Higgins, was how many short routes he caught.
Yep.
And ran through arm tackles. Like, that was kind of impressive there from the Yak standpoint. But
and again, I was surprised as much as we saw him lined up in the slot too. I didn't anticipate. Yeah, so he can clearly play multiple spots there as a receiver, which is interesting.
Yeah, and I know people are in the chat are probably thinking, "Wait, you guys just said you wouldn't take him, and now it sounds like you would." You're looking at it from every angle, trying to. And again, it's still a no for me. It's just we're pointing out now. Here's why he's going to garner a lot of attention in free agency, in my opinion.
Yep.
I don't think they can franchise him again, right? He's been franchised twice, I think. So I don't think they can franchise tag him again.
Who?
Jason,
yeah.
What's that?
T. Higgins, you're saying?
Yeah. Okay, so because the rule is you can only franchise twice. That's why he was mad last year, because they did it back-to-back years. Jason White, MVS is available. Kidding. Get him out of here. Get Jason out of
Sit your butt outside.
MVS, man. Hey, MVS got a ring, though, don't he? He went out and got him a ring last year. Look at Tim. Tim, would you have bet the farm that we would have a ring before MVS got one? I would have felt pretty good about that.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, me too. It's crazy.
What I miss the most about MVS is him roasting Kenny Clark, how they used to go back and forth on Twitter. It was hilarious.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Kenny Clark said he looked like CJ off Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. And, what was it? MVS kept making fun of Kenny's hairline. It was just hilarious, man. Cracking me up the whole time. So, all right, man. Anything else you want to hit on? We're at the 40 mark. I think we did good. I wanted to get that wide receiver talk in because we've hit on it a little bit. We try to do a little bit deeper dive today just to prove, like, if you're down on Reed and you're down on Dobbs and the receivers we got, there's no reason to think T. Higgins is going to be an upgrade. I mean, he got more targets and was less productive than Jaden Reed. That's essentially what it comes down to. So, but again, like Tim said, you're looking in terms of deployment, he can do things that Jaden Reed can't do in stretching the field. There's no doubt. Yep. And this may be the year that Jordan Love passes Burrow up. He might just pop this year. That's on the table too. I just want to make sure that I want to make sure that people understand that where I stand right now, I'm not going to just be a homer, everything's all sunshine and rainbows, like Jordan Love is better than Joe Burrow, because Joe Burrow he played some damn good football this year, man.
Yep.
Damn. I do feel comfortable saying that Jordan Love was better than Aaron Rodgers this year, though. I think they're probably right there in the same ballpark, but that makes you feel a little bit better about them moving on from Aaron too. Like, okay, Aaron's still good at football, don't get me wrong, and I'll always be an Aaron fan as long as he's not playing the Packers. But kind of feels like we made the right decision there for sure. So
yeah, absolutely. Speaking of receivers, Josh Martin confirming here, DeAndre Hopkins retiring.
Yeah, he
not that we were going to consider bringing him in.
No. He caught a lot of hell over that drop, though. That was a bad-looking drop there in that moment. I think that he's just like, what am I doing? This was my best shot at getting the ring, and it didn't happen, so move it along. What you're probably going to see with the Chiefs now is you'll probably see there's a decent chance that Kelsey retires. Obviously, D-Hop's retiring, so they have to go get another receiver to help there. Xavier Worthy, to me, looked good. He was one of those dudes, Tim. I don't buy into the underwear Olympics, but he torched the 40-yard dash. And boy, that speed showed up on the field too.
For sure.
So that's a good hit for them. They just got to do some refiguring, because again, the Eagles knew the blueprint. The Eagles were like, you know what? We're just going to go smack them in the mouth with a 4-man rush. They won't be able to block us. And yeah. Oh, did he really, Josh? That's interesting. So Kelsey said he wasn't retiring. I thought it was still on the table. That's cool that information's out. To me, Kelsey is on the downturn big time.
Oh yeah. Did you see those clips of him trying to? It was a great example of what we talk about with our guys. He was trying to get the Eagles players to fight during.
Oh
the
yeah.
game. Did you see
Walking
that?
toward them and then turning away.
Yeah. Little elbow check, little shoulder check, little extra jawing after the play, and then that Eagles defense, nobody was falling for it. Nobody fell for that at all. So, I hope our guys see that, our young players, because we've had issues in the past with guys getting a little chippy and they get shoved, they shove back, and we get the 15-yard penalty, so you got to keep your head out there. I think that's a testament to the way that defense is coached there in Philly, that those guys were not having any of the shenanigans.
Yeah. Travis Kelce, looking at his numbers, 823 yards receiving. He actually led their team, only 3 touchdowns, but he had 133 targets. That comes to 6.1 yards per target. With the Packers and Tucker Kraft, Tucker finished with 707 on only 70 targets. Check this out, boys. This is going to be absolutely awesome. Tucker Kraft, 707, right? Divided by 70, 10.1 yards per target. So Kelce, 6.1, Tucker Kraft, 10.1.
Here's the guy.
I would say amongst all tight ends in the league, that yards per target, Tim, at 10.1 is, it is up there. If we were to go receiving leaders, I'm going to be late if I ain't careful. What time is it? 10:50. Yeah,
we're already late, Clay.
Welcome to our world here. I was trying to see if we could find the receiving for tight ends position group. I wanted to see exactly where Tucker may have ended up, because Brock Bowers, by the way, absolute stud. He was our top tight end on our board. He was number 3 on our board last year. We talk about having a score of 5 points or less on our draft board. There was only 6 players that fell into that category. One of those was Brock Bowers, and he was an absolute stud. So he led the league at the tight end position at 1,194 yards receiving. What would his come to? And this will be the last thing we do. I want to look. This is the top receiver in receiving, or top tight end in receiving yards on 153 targets. 7.8 was. Tucker Kraft probably led the league. Looks like George Kittle is the one that would give him the biggest run here. It'd be 106 divided by 94. Yeah, 11.7 was George Kittle. And if I'm looking at these numbers correctly, yeah, Tucker Kraft second. Maybe Jonnu Smith. No, it's Tucker Kraft. So it was George Kittle at 11.7 and then Tucker Kraft at 10.1.
Let's go.
Yeah, we literally have a top 3 tight end. I'm so excited about it. And they need to press into that. That and Jaden Reed, they need to press into those 2 guys being the feature. And if you go out and you do decide to pull the trigger and go and get, a T. Higgins or a Chris Godwin or somebody, let them stretch the field. But the big part of that whole target conversation, Tim, we'll wrap up with this, is Matt LaFleur is not going to build an offense where you just take shot plays. Just throw it deep to hit T, throw it deep to T.
It's not going to happen.
Ain't going to happen. So he's going to kind of work the concept that makes sense for the defense you're playing that week. And listen, stay on time and understand what you're reading. Receivers, understand your choice routes, and let's go get the.
But you still need that guy, though, right? You need that guy that's going to run that 9 for you and take that defense backwards, and run your dagger concept, run your underneath, your crossers, things like that. So it is important, but you're right. We're not just going to chuck the ball down the field all day long. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, definitely. All right, that's it. Tim, you got anything else, bub?
No, ready for this wide receiver first mock draft possibly tonight, right? We got to do our next draft exercise.
We got the Higgins talk out of the way there. I wanted to do a deep dive on that. We could do the Packers restructure. We would do a mock draft tonight where we force ourselves that our first pick is going to be wide receiver. We're doing this. We already did O-line. We did corner. We'll do wide receiver next. It doesn't mean you're going to take one in the first round. It simply means the first pick we make is going to be wide receiver. We're going to show the scenario where, hey, look, it doesn't make sense yet. Let's trade back. Or, yep, it definitely makes sense. So-and-so fell to us, and he's the top 10 prospect. So that'll be a lot of fun. But everybody have a great day. If you would hit that like button on the way out, really appreciate everybody making us a part of your morning. As always, let's go out and be the change we want to see in the world. Go Packers.
And we go. We out.
Bye, guys.